Hello, and welcome to Handled-ish, Productivity for the Imperfect, a weekly podcast for those who want to elevate their productivity but are not looking for perfection. I'm your host, Betsy Hayes, and I am so glad you're joining me from podcast land or from YouTube. Hello. Today we're going to talk about, I think this is a funny topic. It'll be interesting to see what you think. But it's the idea of introducing our fantasy self to our regular self. And this is something that I actually, kind of joke about it a lot. I will say something like, well, my fantasy self does blah, blah, blah. And usually it provokes a few chuckles. But I really started thinking about this. And if our fantasy self and our actual self meet each other more often, I think we're going to be a lot happier. So a couple of examples. So first of all, the idea of a fantasy self is somebody that we wish we were, right? So the self that we wish we were, but if we're really honest, we really aren't, okay? And we probably won't be. Now, this is completely different than dreams and aspirations and all of those wonderful things, which of course we will talk about on a future podcast episode. But these are the things that we think we are, but if we're honest, we're really not. So that's why we call it our fantasy self. So for example, my fantasy self is a gardener. She has amazing garden. She has a vegetable garden. She goes out and picks lettuce and tomatoes and makes her salad from her garden and has cucumbers and makes cucumbers and zucchini and makes zucchini bread and gives it to her neighbors. All the things, right? My fantasy self is a very serious, hardcore gardener. However, I am 54 years old and I have never gardened once in my life. I don't have a clue how to do it. And if I really think about it, I don't even want to plant a garden. And shout out, by the way, to all the gardeners out there, God bless you. And I will take your leftover cucumbers and zucchini bread and tomatoes and be so happy and be your friend. It's just not going to happen for me. So it's time that my fantasy self and my real self actually get to know each other. And as of this moment, I am giving up the fantasy of becoming a gardener because it's just not going to happen for me. And perhaps there's some things like that you have, right? It's things that you kind of, oh yeah, I'm going to do that someday, but you don't. And if you're being really honest, maybe it's something you don't even want to do, or is something that maybe was an old wish, right? And doesn't really work with your life now. My fantasy self is also a runner. Absolutely. She runs 5Ks, 10Ks. I don't think she's going to run any marathons, but 100% going to be a runner. I have always been enthralled with the idea of being a runner. I think being a runner is so cool. I think races are cool. The social aspect, the competitive aspect, all of that appeals to me. Yeah. I have probably run 3 miles in the last 30 years. So once again, my fantasy self and my actual self need to meet, and I need to let it go that I'm not going to be a runner. And that's okay. Because again, if I think about it, I don't even know if I want to be a runner, like actually doing the work of being running. I like the idea of it. I don't know if I would like it in practice. In fact, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't. Otherwise, I think I'd be a runner right now. On the flip side, my fantasy self also did yoga. This is something I've thought about for years. I would periodically do yoga, not with very much consistency, but always had this thing that I am a person that does yoga, yet didn't actually do yoga. And then the pandemic. And while we were at home, a lot of people really got to thinking about things that they had been putting off, right? And for me, it was yoga. And I found the most fantastic online yoga instructor, because that was the other motivator, right? I could do this from home with an actual human because it's COVID and everything is on Zoom. So I found the most amazing yoga instructor, signed up for classes, started doing yoga on a regular basis, meditation on the regular basis, all these things that my fantasy self had wanted me to do. And when my fantasy self met my real self, I actually am a yogi and I actually do meditation. And I love both of those things. And do I do them with the consistency that my fantasy self would? No. But you know what? My real self just fine. And I love it when I can figure out doing it. And a lot of times I am consistent, and it's fabulous. So I really encourage you to think about those things, right? Think about those things that you're thinking about yourself that aren't your actual self. And let's let those go, right? I'm never going to be a gardener. I'm never going to be a runner. Y'all probably have some of that stuff too. Doesn't make us bad people. We can still bless gardeners and runners and be so enthusiastic about what they do and not do it ourselves and embrace the stuff that really is us, right? For me, it's embracing the yoga and meditation. Has been so fabulous for the enjoyment in my life. Let's do that, right? Let's get to know our real selves better and what we actually want and what we actually aspire to and what we actually want to do. And we're not just in love with the idea of it. I can't wait to hear some of the examples that you hopefully will want to share, because I think this idea is really fun. And I love the language that we're using around it, because I think then it gives us a little bit of a lighter way to have this conversation. And, no one is feeling bad about themselves, because that is the last thing that we want to do, right? Okay, so have fun with this. Thank you for joining me today. I'd love to hear what you think. Please let me know at my website, BetsyAHayes.com. That's Betsy, don't forget the A, HAYS.com. And to help keep this podcast going, please consider subscribing, sharing with a friend, and maybe even rating and reviewing. I very much appreciate and value your support. And thanks as always to my amazing producer, Gianna, with RPM Public Relations. Tune in next week for the next episode of Handled-ish, Productivity for the Imperfect. Until then, take care and be kind to yourself. You are doing way better than you think you are. Trust me.